That moron, believe me, if he was here, he wouldn't understand the world because he doesn't speak English. Can you understand a state whose finance minister doesn't speak English? This is what Netanyahu did. We think Netanyahu has a wonderful English and he is such a diplomat. He knows that he destroyed Israel when he put such morons as ministers in the worst time of Israel. That is what he is doing, surrounding himself with the dumbest idiots. I can tell you something about them later, about the Israeli government. Unbelievable. This is how he weakened us.
This was my guest today, Avshalom Elitzur, an Israeli physicist, philosopher and unflinching critic of the powers to be. Avshalom isn't your typical public intellectual. He is a man who calls things as he sees them, even if it means turning the heat on his own people, his own government, and yes, even his own identity. Welcome back to Psychoanalytics, where we challenge mainstream narratives and dive deep into global events. I'm Thomas Karat, your host, presenting weekly insights from recognized thought leaders like diplomats, academics, intelligence experts, and sometimes activists of some sort. So join us as we uncover the hidden stories beneath the headlines. You can find us on YouTube, Twitter, TikTok, Spotify, Apple Podcast, or any of your other preferred podcast platforms. And if you want to discover more about Israel potentially using its nuclear arsenal, a topic covered in the interview, join me on Substack. It's free and you get unfiltered, in-depth analysis without the big tech algorithms and bias. A link is in the description. In the following conversation, we are diving into some of the most charged topics imaginable right at the heart of Israel and the broader Middle East. I'll be speaking to an Israeli who is openly critical to the Zionist project, who calls Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his family a corrupt dynasty governing through deception. And Avshalom doesn't mince words when he speaks of the impact that Netanyahu's government and others before it have had on Israel, on its soul and on its future. He argued that they have led the nation built on hope down a path of corruption and despair. But it's not only the government that's under fire. Avshalom takes aim at the Zionist ideology itself, questioning its legacy and the price it's exacted not only on the Palestinians but on the moral fabric of Israel. And while he holds empathy for the Palestinian struggle, he's just as unsparing towards Palestinian leaders and Arab states. He sees shared accountability, a betrayal of their people's potential, and is unapologetically calling them out for it. This is an interview for anyone ready to confront uncomfortable truth, to question the narratives handed down by both Israeli and Palestinian leadership. You will get a glimpse to what it really means to think freely, without allegiance to party lines, national dogmas, or convenient half-truth. Avshalom speaks to us not as a dissenter, but as a believer in a different future. So join us as we explore his vision of a Middle East where honesty, not ideology, shapes the dialogue. This is a conversation for those who dare to look beyond the rhetoric and ask, what could a truly free Israel and a free Palestine really look like? But before we do, a quick call to action. Some of the best interviews on this channel are shadowbanned, which means YouTube is not presenting them to you, the viewer. The latest example is my interview with James Bamford, where we discussed the truly amazing story that underlies Benjamin Netanyahu's corruption scandal. Did you know that a Hollywood billionaire not only stole nuclear secrets from America, but then sold them to Israel? And that Netanyahu helped him to stay out of troubles to this very day? And then Netanyahu turned around and started to ask for favors, hence the bribery charges in Israel against him. Other examples are the interviews with the so-called Hamas lawyer Stanley Cohen, or the interview with the former chief of staff of Colin Powell, who told me that the white powder in the test tube that Colin Powell showed the world when he testified at the UN just before the war on Iraq was actually salt. So if you're interested in content that apparently you're not supposed to see, content that goes against the mainstream narrative. Have a look at some of the previous interviews that we have recorded for your pleasure. And of course, it really helps to spread the news if you like and subscribe to this channel. Avshalom Elitzur, what a pleasure having you on this early morning here in Amsterdam. It just becomes slightly up by you. I see already the sun, if I see this correctly.
Yes, this is the south of Israel, and uh, we barely had rains so far. The autumn is only beginning.
Same here. Avshalom, I have a most impressive, how shall I say this, CB, in lack of a better term, in front of me. Yeah? I would say you are the next best thing to Albert Einstein. And I'm not saying this to have a polite conversation. I'm referring to you in your profession. Before we start, Avshalom Elitzur, where's your name coming from?
Avshalom is a name, a biblical name, not a nice name, for a rebellious Oedipal guy who tried to murder his father and slept with his 10 wives. So I hope I don't have these tendencies. Literally, that means father of peace. Cyrus, my middle name is Cyrus. I was born in Iran, so this is where my surname, Hebrew surname, comes from. My family name was Amdadi, or in the Muslim form Medadullah, which means God is my helper. So my late father uh, translated it to Hebrew as Elitzur, which is has about the same meaning.
Very interesting. Now, you just mentioned you come from Iran. Now, I interviewed Professor Avshalom, who comes from Iraq, different story. But there were those two countries, Egypt and Iraq, where the precursors of the IDF basically bombed Arab Jews, Jewish targets in those countries to scare the Jews to go into Israel. Now, I don't know how was your situation. How was the situation in Iran? So, how did you come, or how did your family come from Iran? Because I think you were a child. You were like 4 years old, I believe.
Baby, yeah, less than 2 years. That was a very remote city. Now it's a bigger one, but a very little Jewish community in Kerman, close to the Afghani border. At that time, Jews, there was the reign of the Shah. So Jews were in best terms with the Shah, which was again a tragedy because later he turned to be, a dictator. So much of the hatred towards Israel is probably from that time in which the Israeli government trained his Sabak, his secret service, uh, a mistake that Israel has done many, many times to be affiliated with dictatorial regimes or even murderous regimes all over the world to our shame. So when they came, always there was tension from what I heard from my parents between Muslims. There were Shiites and Jews. However, I have to mention this. My grandmother and my aunt were once saved by a Muslim when a riot wanted to kill some Jewish people. So the landlord, who was a Muslim, stood out according to the Arab tradition and said, anybody who wants to hurt these women will have to kill me. So he saved them. So we have to remember also these stories.
It's not, there is no black and white. Yeah, there's a lot of gray in between. But one more time. So, what was the trigger for you to, also for your family, sorry, for your family to leave because of the repressive regime of the Shah?
It was no, it was at that time they were in the best terms. The Jewish people were in best terms with the Shah. The revolution came many years later. Sheer Zionism. Israel called Jewish people from all the world to come to immigrate to Israel. It was a religious. I had a religious upbringing. My parents were observant Jews. So they came just out of the Zionist sentiment.
And I have to ask specifically in regards to what's just going on. And I have to say, I was in Amman the very night when Iran shot rockets onto Israel. We could feel. I mean, we were out in a restaurant. A son was calling, "Mother, mother, mother!" The house is shaking. Yeah, we didn't know yet what was happening. We thought maybe an earthquake or something. Yeah, so Jordan is that close. Um, but where do I want to go with this now?
That puts
Yeah, for you as Iranian, yeah,
yeah.
I know it.
My
For
former
you,
motherland is now shooting my present country. Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
quite.
yeah. So I wanted to ask you, for you as coming from Iran, with the situation deteriorating, and of course that's not something new. So Netanyahu tries already, I don't know, for 20 years to pull America into a war with Iran. But for you, how is it? As Iranian, being a nuclear physicist in Israel, I mean, how complex can it get?
Quantum physicist, first of all. Well, I have to say something about my difficulty in coming to this interview. I'm an Israeli, and you shouldn't, in any place, take out the dirty laundry outside. These are things that we have to solve in ourselves. So there is a problem with me appearing on a foreign podcast and going to say very harsh things about my government. That's a difficulty. What do you do? I think that what I'm saying is the following. We are a democracy. No guarantee that we will remain a democracy. When democracy is lost, this is the time in which people can and should ask the help of others, help us being a democracy, because, just as communist countries used to encourage communism everywhere, democracies, it is for their best interest that the whole world will be democratic. I think that there is no argument about that, that you have less wars between democratic uh, countries. Usually one of the sides is non-democratic. So this is why so far we are a democracy. We might, you know, hopefully not be in a situation in which we shall ask the help of the world, because then the problem will be a human rights problem for us Jewish people in our homeland. About my former motherland, which I still hope that one day we shall be able to visit it. My parents, unfortunately, are not anymore. Um, I'm not a politician, but when I see the new president, I hope that there are wise people in our leadership. Why was that necessary to do to choose such a provocative action when apparently the new president, Pezeshkian, who is, by the way, Pezeshkian is just like a physician, and he is a physician, and probably this is something which goes in his family, but he looks like a decent person, a reformist. And who knows, perhaps it was not in his intention to come to a war with us. So, I don't know. Was it wise to do that? I have no idea.
We have to spell it
think,
out. The viewers may not know what you're referring to. So you are referring to the assassination of Ismail Haniyeh at the very eve of the inauguration of Iranian's new president within Iran. Yeah, this is what you're referring to. That's a real, I would say, the middle finger of Israel towards Iran. You cannot say it any other way.
yeah, thank you for mentioning that, because the events are following one another so quickly that we forget. So I don't know. I'm not an expert, and still here you have two huge nations. The Persian, there are few nations within Iran, with the Persian and the others, and the Jewish one, two ancient civilizations, very closely linked together. Great part of the Bible has to do with Persia, ancient Persia. Uh, Both one of them is for many years suffering under the boots of the brutal dictatorship, and we are facing the calamity of becoming similar to Iran in this respect, and this is horrifying. Let me give you only one example. Uh, 2 days ago, Israel managed to kill
Sinwar.
Well, our former chief rabbi, Yitzhak Yosef, said that we managed to do it because of the people who studied Torah and they helped, whatever they did, helped the soldiers to kill this guy. You know, being Israeli, I had very few encounters with anti-Semitism live because here I see, I don't see many gentlers. Few times I met an anti-Semite, but sometimes I think, always anti-Semites said Jews are conniving, they are mean, they are this and that. But this is the first time which I'm afraid that anti-Semites will say Jews are so dumb, and that's the problem. In Israel, we have a huge sector of ultra-religious people who do not go to the army, pay very little taxes, and they are deprived of basic education.
And they have a lot of children.
Horrible. And this is here in Israel. Imagine children who never study any language, mathematics, sciences, nothing. They study the scriptures, the Torah and the Talmud, and when they grow up, they go to schools of such studies. The state of Israel finances them. They bring many children because they should not. They are prohibited from using contraceptives and so on. And during the Netanyahu regime, this has turned into a malignant problem in Israel. And according to all forecasts, within few years, we are going to become an ultra-Orthodox state, which means our doom. What worries me is the following. Israel exists for 70 some years. We've been through wars with our nice neighbors. We managed to uh, overcome them, not because we outnumber them. They outnumber us by orders of magnitude. We managed to do that because we were more advanced, we were more civilized, we were not more learned. This was our advantage. And the fear is, dictatorships like to idiotize the masses. The Netanyahu regime, sometimes you can see that it is almost their explicit aim to hurt the education in Israel, to diminish academia and the intellectuals and high tech. And this, if that succeeds, if we become a dictatorship, we will just become like like most of the countries surrounding us. And then they will overcome us. They will outnumber us, and if we don't have the advantage, intellectual advantage over them, we are doomed.
That's why Netanyahu uses biblical terms. For example, when he talks about Amalek.
I'm also using biblical terms when I talk about this despicable man. I mean, never in Jewish history, but I don't think that anywhere in world history we have such a vile person like Netanyahu. He's the greatest traitor in the history of Israel, and I don't think that I find anything parallel to him in any history. Imagine, I don't know, imagine the British financing the Nazis, the Nazi party. Imagine the Jews financing the Tsar and the anti-Semites. Never have we seen such a case when we are talking about Sinwar. The overlap of interests between him and Netanyahu is one of the most obvious secrets in the world. There is no secret about it. Here is a Israeli prime minister who has made the following calculation. Sorry, he hates the guts of uh, what's his name, the head of the Palestinian Authority, Abu Mazen. He has reasons to hate him because Abu Mazen is not a terrorist. He's not a Zionist. He's not a Philosemite. He would be very happy if we evaporate one day, but he's not a terrorist ever since Arafat was gone. He's an old bureaucrat who keeps, in his last years, saying, for God's sake, let's have peace. Give us a place under the wall, we Palestinians, and we want, this is at least what he says, we want to live side by side along with you. This is the horror of Netanyahu. Netanyahu would much more prefer Arafat, that dumb traitor in himself who never cared about the Palestinian people, and he was a terrorist. He was born a terrorist, died a terrorist. Abu Mazen is not like that, and he was the nightmare of Netanyahu. What did this genius do? Now there is the Gaza part of the Palestinian Authority. They are Muslim, they are fanatic, they hate us, they are terrorists. Let's strengthen them in order to diminish the Palestinian Authority. And he did this with tremendous success. Ever since we released Sinwar, just, that monster, imagine a prisoner in Israeli war who had brain cancer. He was operated by Israeli doctors. I mean, how ungrateful can you be? I don't care. Okay, he's a diabolic figure in himself. Good riddance. But now he became a terrorist. And Netanyahu said, let me say it in Hebrew, HaHamas hu neches. Hamas is an asset to the state of Israel. Can you understand how diabolic it was? And it was repeated by the dumb finance minister. We have a guy named Bezalel Smotrich.
Yeah.
Believe
Smotrich and Ben Gvir. Yeah, those two. Yeah.
that moron. Believe me, if he was here, he would understand the world because he doesn't speak English. Can you understand a state whose finance minister doesn't speak English? This is what Netanyahu did. We think Netanyahu is a wonderful English and he is such a diplomat. He knows that he destroyed Israel when he put such morons as ministers in the worst time of Israel. That is what he is doing, surrounding himself with the dumbest idiots. I can tell you something about them later, about the Israeli government. Unbelievable. This is how he weakened us. But then he said, let's cultivate the Hamas. So he was the means by which the Qataris transferred millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars, for this monster growing in some 40 kilometers from here, the Hamas territory. Not only that, but at least 6 times he aborted operational suggestions by the Shabak, by the Israeli Secret Service, to kill Sinwar and some other senior people in the Hamas in Gaza. High treason. He is a traitor. And to this day, when we have 101 captives in captivity in the tunnels there in Gaza, it would be a miracle if 20 some of them are alive. Most of them are dead. And
And most of them probably killed by Israel.
some of them, we know that. We know at least one soldier, his mother keeps screaming about that. You knew when you went to kill that officer of the Hamas that my son, the soldier, is there. Yeah, and some of them. Actually, no, you're correct. I'm sorry. You're correct. There were 3 captives who ran away. One of them
Exactly. With the white flag.
alone
Yeah.
is unbelievable.
Yeah.
Imagine 3 excellent boys, one Arab, 2 Jewish, managing to escape Hamas. And they had a flag and they screamed, "We are Israelis." They were shot, not because the soldiers were evil, cruel, because even our army became dumb. When you have a corrupt prime minister, then corruption goes down because he has a hand in selecting, in nominating the commander in chief, the ministers, all the high officials, judges. Now, this is what frightens us so much, that the Israeli government wants to interfere with the judges. So yes, our army is not as good as it was. And as we say, we say occupation corrupts. But the opposite is also true. Corruption occupies, corruption spreads like cancer. And when you have for about 20 years a corrupt prime minister who is a thief, who is, I mean, such a low-life person like Netanyahu. Imagine a man married to a woman who is, I don't know whether she is psychotic, but sorry for going into the gossip and sorry for going astray, but imagine the wife of a prime minister who every time that they go to the White House, you know what she takes with herself? Sarah Netanyahu, she takes laundry. I mean, how this is so embarrassing. The state of
Are
Israel.
you saying, sorry, just to verify for our viewers, are you saying she's stealing laundry from the White House and
No,
takes it
no,
with it?
no.
Oh, sorry.
Worse than that. She takes laundry from Israel. Uh, this has been verified by officials in the White House. This woman is taking laundry from Israel to wash them in the White House. That could be funny if that was Iran, if that was Saudi Arabia, but this is my state. Can you understand the degree of madness in which we live? That woman is alcoholic. She has control over nominations. Her husband is afraid of her. I don't know why. Frankly, I don't care. Now they have a son, Yair Netanyahu. He sued me for $1 million more. Why is he abroad? The rumors say that he hit his father and the Secret Service had to intervene. If you ask, how come that the mighty army of Israel was so, in such a humiliating way, defeated, not by another army, but by a gang of people who came with motorcycles, with bicycles, and they managed to sweep all over Israel. One thing, let me tell you, there has been people murdered in the nature festival in the Nova, many young people. They probably saved many lives, Israeli lives, because those young boys and girls who were caught by the terrorists ran away, hiding in the bushes, in the rocks, and the mob of murderers and rapists, by chasing them, that's what delayed him from continuing to go over Israel because they came into some of our southern cities and murdered dozens of people there. So can you imagine when I think, look at these pictures of the most beautiful boys and girls that we have murdered. They murdered and they somehow saved our lives. This is the tragedy. Now, why is that? How come that we have been defeated not by an army, not by tanks, just by terrorists? Because we became dumb. We are being rotten. Corruption is just, destroying us from the beginning. It begins with a prime minister just going to a meal and never paying for it, or telling you, my wife needs jewelries, please make sure that she has them. This is now in court. When you have this going on for 20 years, no wonder that rifles don't work, that ammunition is not there, that the army is not functioning. This is the nature of corruption, that when you remove all the people who are the gatekeepers, the legal advisors and so on, and controllers and so on, which Netanyahu's regime has managed to diminish and to shrink in order to put his people. This is why we are becoming a third world state, which worries me so much. And if we don't stop it, we will become third world state.
Avshalom, hold the thought. We will continue with October the 7th, but before we do, I really would like to introduce you. We slipped into the conversation and it's fascinating, so it's very easy to roll on. Yeah, but I really would like to give the viewer a bit a better impression about who you are. But we will continue with October the 7th because you said some key things here. Yeah. Now, I have a little excerpt, yeah, and I don't claim 100% accuracy. I'm using ChatGPT these days for my research, and I know from experience that ChatGPT is only limited trustworthy, especially when it comes to Israel. I even made a video showing that ChatGPT is biased. Anyway, Avshalom Elitzur, and this is 2 paragraphs that ChatGPT extracted for me.
That would be nice.
So Avshalom, and I'm going to read it out. Yeah. So Avshalom is an Israeli physicist and philosopher of science, well known for his work in the foundations of quantum mechanics and his exploration of consciousness. Keyword consciousness. I'm a lucid dreamer and have more than 1,000 recorded dreams. So I'm very interested in regards to consciousness. Yeah. Now, Avshalom is best known for co-developing the Elitzur-Weidmann nuclear bomb tester, right? In 1993 already, which introduced the concept of interaction-free measurement. And my hunch is this is referring to the double slit experiment where the behavior of electrons changes when you observe them. And me being a complete amateur when it comes to physics, yeah. So that's a way to detect an object without direct interacting with it based on quantum mechanical principles. This work has implication for understanding the nature of quantum observations and the measurement problem that I was just referring to. That was paragraph 1. There's a second one. Avshalom has also explored philosophical issues, especially those concerning time, free will, and the mind-body problem. His interdisciplinary approach merges physics, philosophy, and cognitive science, positioning him at the intersection of these fields. His views on time asymmetry, I had to look it up, yeah. His views on time asymmetry and temporal phenomena in quantum mechanics have sparked discussions on whether a flow of time can be explained through the laws of physics, challenging traditional assumptions. And then you have a couple of, again, I have one sentence in red. Yeah, you obtained a PhD without formal university training. I mean, that's what I come back to of my first sentence. You must,
I never
you
fin
must.
I never finished high school. It's a long story, so I can.
So that's what I mean. You must be very close to Albert Einstein. Yeah,
Come on, no. He was a
and
great.
then you have a couple of other things. Very interesting also to discuss the psychology, psychoanalytic insights into the Bible and Judaism. Fascinating topic. You're the founder of the Israel Institute for Advanced Research, and you won the Noetic Medal of Consciousness and Brain Research. And I'm pretty sure I have not listed everything. So I really want to understand the viewer, the depth of your, how shall I say this, knowledge and the breadth, your different scientific fields, where you have reached also the epitome, basically. So did I miss something? My first question, did I miss something?
Interesting. ChatGPT. I didn't know that it was that good. One thing was not correct. The Elitzur-Weidmann bomb testing experiment is good for all bombs, not only nuclear bombs. So this is something that ChatGPT just somehow added in. And you're correct. We used my friend Lev Weidman and myself. That was during my PhD. We have shown that, and we use the case of a bomb in order to make it more dramatic. Suppose that you have a bomb which is so sensitive that even the slightest interaction known to physics, say a single photon hitting it, will make it explode. You can imagine having such bombs which are super sensitive. Now you have a problem. Suppose that you have a factory of such bombs, and some of them went bad, became wet or rusty or something like that. So you want to know which of them is good in order to sell to the army and which is bad. I mean, good means bad because it can kill people, but that's your perspective. So the simplest way is to take a torch, later and try each of them. If it explodes, you know that it was good, but then it's not good anymore. The question was, how can you be sure that the bomb can explode, is explodable without making it explode? So it's not only a question in physics, but also in logic. If I tell you that the slightest interaction known to physics will make it explode, that means that logically you cannot test it. You can only know that it was good in retrospect. Luckily, I didn't know that there was a Nobel laureate, forgot his name, who actually said that you cannot make a measurement without using at least one photon, which this is what we did. And just as you guessed, we have used the famous wave-particle duality, which says that any basic unit of matter or energy, be it an electron, proton, atom, or photon, or whatever, is both a particle and a wave. That's a problem that has not been resolved today because it has a dual nature. So in some cases it acts like a particle, in some cases it acts like a wave. So you make, as you correctly said, something akin to the double slit experiment, in which a particle goes through two separate slits at the same time. And you know that it went through both of them because it gives rise to a phenomenon known as interference, which only waves do. But still, it's a particle, so that's a mystery. So we didn't solve the mystery, we just use it. We said, if you ever have such a bomb, come and show us, and we will be able to tell you almost 100% of the cases that it's good without making it explode. That paper was rejected by, I think, 4 journals. They said, no way, no such a thing. In some cases, it was an editorial rejection, which means that it was not even sent to review. But then Roger Penrose, who later got the Nobel Prize, gave it a huge publicity in his books. And then Anton Zeilinger from Vienna at that time, who is now also a Nobel laureate, was the first just to do the experiment. So the experiment was actually, I believe, done before we found a place which journal which agreed to publish it. And you know, the rest is history. So have we, Weidman and myself, writing a patent on this, we would both be millionaires. Have we managed? I am happy that I didn't do it, and Lev too. That would divert us from research. And ever since then, together with other students of mine, we managed to go much further. I should mention, so my unusual biography is that I was very fortunate to meet a person who is more than a father to me, Yakir Aharonov. He's also a candidate many years for the Nobel Prize. He is now 92, still fresh and energetic. And he's the man who went to the authorities of Tel Aviv University and says, yes, I know he didn't finish high school, he doesn't have first degree, but I want to take him for a PhD. And I hope that I justify that I'm worthy of his trust and of his effort. He's still one of the closest persons to me to this day, and I'm very privileged of working together with him.
Thank you for this elaboration, and really, I mean, doing my research into you. Usually, how it goes, I find an interesting person mostly through an interview somewhere. Then I do some superficial research. Then I reach out to the person, and if the person responds in either way, I start to do more research. And in your case, I mean, I didn't know where to stop. I was really on an exploratory journey with some incredible discoveries. Yeah, so I'm really honored to have you talking to me.
Pleasure.
Now, I would also like to mention we have spoken before. You gave me half an hour, I think last week, and I came back with a feeling, and you don't have to comment on it, yeah, but I had the feeling you were sad. I'm not even sure that the word sad is the right expression. But let's just say you were extremely concerned about the situation. I could feel your emotions in that call. So, and coming back to October the 7th and Netanyahu and his wife, I do understand from an Israeli point of view how the situation developed. Yeah? What I don't understand in terms of October the 7th specifically is what you already mentioned. There are discrepancies. So Hamas breached the fence on 29 spots, according to some numbers, others say 39. In some places, it took 48 hours for the military to arrive. In the meantime, we all have seen reports coming from Israel that many of the Israeli hostages were actually killed by the Israeli army. Yeah, we have the videos from the helicopter pilots who shoot everything that's moving. We have seen the testimonies and the videos from Israeli tanks shooting into the kibbutz where they knew there were Israeli hostages. I have seen drone footage from a graveyard of several hundred cars, right, which had to be I mean, they're mangled, they're burned. This is one big pile of rubbish. Yeah. Now, the Hamas fighters did not have the equipment to cause that type of damage. It had to have come from Apache Hellfire missiles or similar weapons. So I'm not diminishing what happened that day. I know from Nurit Pelet El Hanan, who has specifically asked, the festival was about 5 kilometers from the actual border. That means that how some people call them terrorists, other people like U.S. Ambassador Josh Friedman, he said Gaza is the greatest open air prison in the world. Yeah, since 2006, nobody could go in or out. There's a whole generation of people, young people, which is the most critical and problematic demographic. Unmarried male between 16 and 22, 23, right? They're in this prison, they're hearing and potentially even seeing what's happening on this in this music festival. Yeah, they've never set a foot out of this prison, and suddenly this wall breaks down. The people who came out, they're not only Hamas fighters. Yeah, there were anyone, old people. I saw people, old guy with 80 years with a stick. So it's a very, again, it's not very black and white. There are nuances of gray in between. So coming back to you, October the 7th, what's your view?
To this day, I am embarrassed. I don't know. And the situation is so difficult. Let's talk about our nice neighbors, Palestinians. My heart breaks for every casualty in this war. Children should not die, neither here nor there. It breaks my heart. Whole families being wiped out, Palestinian families. The things which are done there are awful. The ravaging of houses, it will take years to just reconstruct it. And as you said, it's a huge prison of 2 million people. My late mother in Rehovot, she had a worker from Rafiah, and at her funeral, I just mentioned when I was asked to say a few words about mother, she died relatively young, and I mentioned this that one day she sent me to the bank and said the worker in our yard now is in Rafiah. That was some 30 years ago, and they are being bombarded, and he said that he has no food for his children. Go to the bank and put some money for him. So that breaks my heart. Having said all that, I try to imagine myself being the prime minister that morning and seeing them cheering and singing and, giving candies to each other. And this is a terrible thing that I have to say, but in the Middle East, never be weak, never show weakness, never have a situation in which these people rejoice over the murder. Imagine a young Palestinian guy, some 20 years old, having murdered some people, taking the phone, calling his parents, Mom, Dad, I've killed Jews, 10 by now. And they say, Oh, dear son, how good for you. That's also another part of it. Uh, I don't know how I would react. I know that I would have to burn into the collective memory of this region, which is a brutal and savage region, that you should never do that. I hope so. I have no answer to you. There were atrocities, and we had to retaliate very quickly. All I can say is, how come that we turned to be so helpless? Some people here say that there was treason inside Israel. I don't believe it. I can tell you that we were very, very dumb because we were corrupt. Do you know, we had a general named Aaron Khaliwa. People are going to hate me. His ex-wife is going to sue me when I tell you this. But he was the head of Amman, the intelligence service of Israel. That idiot gave interviews to Israeli newspapers about himself, how he loves restaurants. In that restaurant, they serve this kind of flesh, and here are the best desserts, and that, and that. For God's sake, you're the commander of Amman. Why do I have to know about your gastronomical hobbies, you moron. And then he said, you know, when I retire, I would like to be Aaron Khaliwa. Just look for him. I would like to spend 1 year in New York to study the restaurants. That was the head of Amman. Something went very wrong. I'm not the commander in chief, but have I heard that I have such a general? I would send him to pension. You shouldn't be, you shouldn't be in the Israeli army if this is what, if you're, I mean, everybody has their own hobbies, but to go to such details, and you know, this is Netanyahu. This is the whole idea. Netanyahu is a person who is so much absorbed in his hedonism to the point that this is really a psychiatric problem. Imagine a person who has at least 40 million shekels in his bank account. He's a millionaire. I think that his fortune is greater than that of Obama today. And to this day, journalists will tell you he invites somebody to a dinner, to a lunch, or something like that. When the time comes to pay, he says, "Oh, sorry," and picks his phone and runs away. This is not mere gossip. This is to tell you that we are governed by a person who is, I mean, he's so narcissistic. He's such a psychopath. And for 20 years, having that person, we are the state who had Ben Gurion, Begin, Yitzhak Rabin, Shimon Peres, Yitzhak Shamir. We had leaders right and left who were extremely bright, who were great statesmen, famous all over the world. And now we got this Netanyahu. The man is deranged. One more thing, he is very sick. The man doesn't want to show his medical record. Why don't you show it? Why is your hand trembling? Why do you need such a thick layer of makeup? What is something protruding from your pants? I mean, in every democratic country, the leader should make his health known to everybody. He has something to hide. Now he's suing some journalists who actually hinted that he has a serious disease. So this is our problem. We have a corrupt government, and that government doesn't want to leave. Netanyahu is facing charges. I mean, their charges are being dwarfed by the charge of treason, which he is not yet prosecuted. But the charges of corruption are very serious. I think in November his trial is going to resume. He will do everything in his power not to go to trial. He will do everything in his power not to go to elections. Not now when all the polls just tell that he's going to lose. This is the greatest risk to our democracy. We have judges, at least one in the Supreme Court, who is corrupt. They managed to do that, just as Trump managed to do with his Supreme Court during his presidency. And if that continues, we shall lose our democracy. And the moment the state ceases to be democratic, it ceases to be advanced. It becomes, look at Ukraine and Russia. Russia is so many times greater than Ukraine. Those Ukrainians with their Zelensky keep, hammering it and shattering the Soviet army. The
Russian.
army, because they are corrupt. When you're corrupt, you are weak. We are very weak now to the point of being at real risk because we are corrupt. Let me remind you that the state of Israel exists because of this plant in Dimona, where we have nuclear power, and this is why our enemies so far were reluctant to go to the end. However, for many years, we have never been in a state, in a situation in which our back is to Dimona. You don't want to be in that situation. We had many other weapons in between to defend ourselves. Now this is shrinking. The danger of a mushroom cloud, the nuclear bomb after more than 70 years, the world seeing another nuclear bomb over this time the Middle East is really serious as long as we have Netanyahu in office.
Noam Chomsky said to me, They will blow up the whole world, but who cares? God is on their side.
I have a friend, Avner Cohen. You may be interested in interviewing him for this podcast of yours. He's now in the United States. He's the greatest expert on the Israeli nuclear weapon. He has been almost imprisoned by the Israeli authorities, although he is Israeli. I wrote a post on Facebook, and much to my horror, Avner said, "You know what? It's a possibility." I mean, Netanyahu is not like Hitler. Hitler said, I'm going to die and let Germany die with me, let the whole world die with me. This is sometimes when deranged dictators who are lunatic can do. Netanyahu is not in that state. However, what's going on in his unconscious? I mean, that man knows that he is destroying Israel, that in order to escape prison, if he's charged, if he's indicted, he will go to prison for the rest of his life. No, there were people.
Sorry, before we move on, because we crossed a couple of times now, Netanyahu, corruption, bribery, prison, and nuclear. Very briefly, I would like to run something by you. And I mean, if you would have been involved in Israel's nuclear program, of course, you were not at liberty to say, but maybe something rings a bell. Yeah. Now, I looked into the 3 corruption charges against Netanyahu, one of which is extremely interesting, and I interviewed an American investigative journalist, James Bamford, for it. He wrote a book called Spy Fail, and one of the key topics in this book, Spy Fail, is the fact that Israel actively spied in the past and still spies on America and extracted nuclear secrets. Now, in the middle, believe it or not, is an Israeli Hollywood billionaire who was instrumental in stealing nuclear secrets together with Netanyahu. Now, everything I will tell you now, we have obtained through FBI documents obtained through the Freedom of Information Act. So there is a gentleman called Arnon Milchan, who is a
Milchen.
Hollywood billionaire.
Milchen.
Sorry, Milchan. On regular basis, I mutilate other people's names. I apologize. So he is a Hollywood billionaire. He produced 120 movies amongst Pretty Woman, 12 Years of Slave, The Fight Club, also the top-end movies this gentleman has produced. He's a longtime friend of Netanyahu.
Not anymore.
And not anymore because he started, and this is where I come to prison, because you're probably more right than you realize. So, but the backstory first, yeah. So over the years, those two, Netanyahu, and at a certain moment, Netanyahu, seemingly, according to those FBI documents, even worked for Arnon Milchan at the time when he was deputy chief, I believe, in the Israeli embassy in Washington. It goes that far back. So what happened? Arnon Milchan had a frontman. This frontman was later caught. This frontman disappeared for 18 years because he faced 105 years of jail. Later was caught. It's a complicated story, but in essence, Arnon Milchan committed active espionage against America. And a couple of years ago, he said this himself on a Hebrew language television channel in Israel. Sitting next to him was Robert De Niro. So basically, and I have this clip, Arnold Milchan compared himself to James Bond, and Robert De Niro confirmed the whole story. Arnold Milchan also said that there were some other indicated some other high-ranking Hollywood celebrities in the service of this Espionage Act. Now, where it becomes political now is the fact that based on that Hebrew language interview, he lost his 10-year visa. Yeah, normal people don't get 10-year visas in the US. Arno Milchan had. So Arno Milchan turned to Netanyahu, and Netanyahu, in his turn, approached the then Secretary of State, John Kerry, 3 times. By the 3rd time, actually, Netanyahu was able to convince Kerry to give Arno Milchan back his 10-year visa, which he needs, because Hollywood is his cash cow. Now then, Netanyahu started to turn around and started to ask for favors. And I know from testimonies from Arnon Milchan himself and some friends that he detested Netanyahu for that fact. And if you think how cheap how cheap it is to buy an Israeli head of state. We talk about, yes, there was this one necklace for his wife, but basically we talk about cigarettes, flights, pink champagne for his wife, that type of thing. So we're not talking about millions. Yeah, it's very cheap to buy if you think about this. But now it comes based on evidence obtained by the FBI. Both Netanyahu and Arnon Milcham were actively engaged in espionage against the United States. And consecutive US governments were aware of it and put the lid on it. Now, I'm not an expert, but I looked into this. The nuclear non-proliferation treaty that America signed would obligate the US to stop funding, financing, supporting any country, inclusive Israel, who violates the nuclear non-proliferation treaty. This is why this is such a key case. Now, you mentioned it. Arnon Milcham started already to testify against Netanyahu, but only on the surface layer of the scandal. They checked, they're discussing these bribery charges, this boxes of champagne, etc. But they don't go on the ultimate question, the why, right? So this is where, and Arnon Milcham was asked in front of a camera, are you not afraid, that Netanyahu, the Mossad, it's a bit risky? And he said, no, because I have many more bullets in my chamber. And that's exactly what he meant. And my concluding remark would be, well, don't feel so sure, because I'm pretty sure Robert Murdoch had the same idea. I have many more bullets in my chamber, and look what happens to him. So that was me talking too much, but are you aware of this underlying
Sure.
layer of in the scandal?
Sure. When you have such a person who has betrayed his three wives, who is so corrupt and so much enslaved to his hedonism, that man is at risk. And when he is a head of state, then the whole state is at risk. I am sure that the FBI and the CIA can also do espionage on their part. What do they know about Yair Netanyahu, who is now in the United States, and they know where he goes? They listen to all his talks. I can guarantee to you that both Biden and whoever comes after him, Putin, Netanyahu, know that there are so many embarrassing things about him and his deranged family that this is what compromises the security of Israel. I mean, everybody has secrets, everybody has intimate lives. You should guard them, you should keep them. Shame on you if you or do whatever you're doing. We manage. Were they pure? Even Menachem Begin, who loved his wife dearly, and he was, a Polish gentleman, he had a mistress somewhere. Okay, nice guy. But that was nothing which has put us at risk. Netanyahu is a huge risk to the security of Israel. Because that man about whom we know very little, about his formative years after being in the Israeli army, all those years in which he was in the United States. Once again, it goes into gossip, but I can't help it. Netanyahu is a grandfather. He has 5 grandchildren. Sweet, all of them. He doesn't know them. They live some 20 minutes far from him in Jerusalem because his first daughter, she's estranged from him. He barely talks to her. So if he ever sees one of his grandchildren in Jerusalem, he will not recognize them. So this is the type of guy that we have as our prime minister. We are exposed. This is our weak point, and after 20 years, the rotting, just like having a tumor, it metastasizes all over your body. And we have little Netanyahus everywhere today. We have them now in court. We have at least one Chief Justice, Elron, who is worthless as a jurist. But Yariv Levin, the justice minister, has appointed him in order to insert the rotting, to insert the corruption into the Supreme Court. And a state which doesn't have a judicial system, an independent judicial system, is going to the drain. This is the tragedy that we have with this traitor Netanyahu. There is another thing about which I want to talk to you, which is very sensitive to me, very sensitive in Israel. I've made many enemies by voicing this concern, but it's true and it's time to talk about it. There are two types of Jews in Israel, Ashkenazis and Sephardics. You know the difference. You can tell by the pigments. People,
But the viewers might not. So you're referring to the Jews with European descent and the Jews with Oriental descent.
yeah, some of them are not Oriental when they came from Morocco, so it's even Western. But yeah, they came from Muslim countries. And there has been some discrimination against the Sephardics, against the Oriental Jews, which I think is forgivable. As a child, I remember some remote cases, although, I've been the Ashkenazi people just raised me, and I owe to them so much of my education and everything else. Now, here is a paradox. Many of Netanyahu's voters, I mean, the strong base of his voters are Sephardi Israelis. And that's terrible. This is the awful thing. He said once, twice at least, one of his aides said that, those Sephardi Jews, they need hatred, and we should give them hatred. Netanyahu said to one of his ex-ministers, who is also Sephardi, Kahlon, he said, you will never get the votes of the Mizrahim, the Orientals, because I know what they want. They want hatred, and I give them this hatred. So you can imagine the situation in which people in Israel, some of them I would say are in their mentalities, they are still Arabs. You can hear songs on Netanyahu, Bibi Habibi, Bibi Habibi, written by Israelis. This is Arabic. This is Arabic mentality of admiring the king, admiring the ruler.
Again, for the viewer, Bibi Habibi means Bibi darling.
Bibi
So
in
Netanyahu,
Arabic.
yeah,
In
yeah.
Arabic. So there is something psychological here. I believe that Freud once talked about it, about the narcissism of small differences, that sometimes the group you hate most is not the one which is very different from you, but they are too similar. So here you have people in Israel who are, them or their parents were born in Muslim countries, and there is a lot, something very oriental in them, even Arabic, the food, music, everything, just like me.
The whole culture, yeah.
And they hate it, and they feel inferior by that. How do they do that? By hating Arabs even more, by becoming very extreme, by hating the Ashkenazis, by hating the learned people, by hating homosexuals, women, everything that, just challenges that old traditional East view of how people should be. And here is the great paradox. You have an Ashkenazi American person, Netanyahu, to whom they worship. That's a huge paradox. I don't know how to solve it. I mention it every once in a while to people like me, who are Netanyahu supporters. For God's sake, how can you admire such a person who despises you? If Sarah Netanyahu sees a man in the street approaching her husband, she would wash him, with all the possible detergents, because this is also one of our problems, being obsessive about cleaning. And he managed, and he still manages to, as you say in Latin, divide et impera, to divide in order
And rule.
to rule. The schism within the Israeli society is awful. And the fact that Netanyahu government is affecting not only the medical services, not only the health services and social services, but mainly the education service, that so many Israeli children do not get education. And the ones who do not go to religious schools, still they are not getting the education they need. I think that this is for the best interest of Netanyahu, to have many people being ignorant, being unlearned, because usually, dictatorship, let's say the following: democracy goes hand in hand with education. And when you have a problem with democracy, then you want to diminish education. I'm pretty sure about it that Netanyahu wants to diminish the education in Israel. There is no any other explanation why we have you know, such a government.
It's very similar to Trump in the US. I mean, basically, all the last 5 minutes, what you said, you could linea recta apply to the US. It's the same system.
These two guys
Yeah.
are so similar,
Yeah.
so similar, and the pathology is similar. I mean, if you look at the Israeli government, you mentioned the United States. There used to be a circus in the United States, the Barnum circus, in which you could see all kinds of miserable people with all kinds of deformities, hunchbacks, dwarfs, and so on. They were put to the audience to see. We had a woman named Miri Regev. She couldn't run, I don't know, a shop. She couldn't sell hot dogs. She's such an idiot, and she's a minister. And I can name to you one after another. I mentioned that Smotrich or Ben Gvir. They're lowlife. If you ever went to a jail and you will pick up some of the guys there, you may get something better than the Israeli government. Now, the question is this. You have Netanyahu, who was a bright person, who is very intelligent. What on earth is he thinking when he appoints such people to his government?
Do you still think he has the free power? I mean, is he not a captive, a hostage of these right-wing elements in it? Because they drop him, he's out. And again, we agree that Netanyahu has a personal stake in prolonging the war, so to stay out of jail. So is he still free in making these decisions, or is
Right? No, he's not free. If he's intimidated by his wife and his son, if he's intimidated,
I don't mean his wife and his son. I mean the
I,
right-wing elements.
no, but ministers in his cabinet. So
Yeah,
Smotrich, Ben
yeah.
Gvir,
These right-wing. Yeah, exactly those. Yeah.
he has one minister who was a general in the Israeli army. He was to be appointed. He was a candidate for the commander in chief, and this is Yoav Gallant. So he is a professional, right wing person, even corrupt himself. But he's the most decent guy today in Israeli government. He's our defense minister. And he's the guy who said, I'm taking responsibility. The moment this is done, I'm going home. He's going to face interrogation committee and all that for all, for all the snafu, what they did. Netanyahu keeps trying to fire him. Imagine you have a general in your government. He's a professional. He knows what he's doing. And he wanted to replace him with Gideon Sa'ar. You don't know who he is. Better not to know. Just the last person you would think that you want to have in your defense minister. Here you have a general talking with the generals. But what on earth is this? Gideon Sal wants to do that. That's the problem with Netanyahu. He doesn't care about the state of Israel anymore. And that brings me again to the problem which I'm facing now when I'm talking to you. I like you very much. We are friends, Thomas, but there is a problem of what I'm doing here. I am talking about my country to other people outside. We shouldn't do that. I am doing that to say the following. We are managing so far. And it's good for you to know that a great part of the Israeli population despises Netanyahu. We want to see this government going away, him facing charges, everybody else. There may come a day in which we may really need your help if some of us are being persecuted by some kind of dictatorship and so on. But it is important for you to know that there are people here who believe that peace is possible. There are people in the other side. You know what, even in Gaza, but also in the Palestinian Authority, who really want peace. And we and the Palestinians, those people who raped our women, our daughters, who murdered our babies, who committed all atrocities, and
The,
we who retaliated, we are tied for eternity. I mean, there is no future for any side without guaranteeing the safety of the other. So we will have to learn to live side by side together, Israel and Palestine, two states alongside one another. It's going to be difficult. Let me tell you the following thing.
Before you do, can you hold the thought? What you don't forget what you just wanted to say. Just let me jump into two key flags that you raised: the killing of the babies and the rapes. So if you talk about those, if you meant those 40 babies, which was propagandized at the very beginning, international media, inclusive media from Israel itself, have proven that this never happened. There was no, these 40 babies, there is no evidence whatsoever that those, if you're referring to those,
No,
yeah,
no, I'm
the
not.
story that even President Biden repeated, where the White House had to pedal back afterwards.
I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about what happened at that morning of the invasion
Okay,
to Israel.
October 7th, okay.
One after another. This mob that came to us, and you can say everything in their defense. They've been in prison for many years. They have been brainwashed by their caddies, our rabbis, and so on. Yeah, you can say everything, but the facts are this: they committed.
Yeah, I'm not defending, I'm trying to understand.
Yeah, me neither. And I can understand, but they committed atrocities to us, horrible ones. There is the horror movie, and I watched it. I not everybody should watch it. You may be traumatized for the rest of your life or from what you see.
Again, for the benefit of the viewer, so the Israeli army has collected, so has produced what you call the horror movie, which is showing the alleged atrocities that have been committed
Alleged.
on
Some
this.
of them, some of the parts of the movies are taken from phones of
Yeah.
Palestinians who boasted for what they did. So you can
Yes,
see that
I'm not saying nothing happened. I'm not saying nothing happened, but I say that there is another role. You know, not everything happened that day as it has been shown.
not everything, but a lot.
Yeah, yeah.
That happened. And you have still children, babies dead. There was no mercy on them, and we also didn't have mercy. I mean, every time we still don't know the magnitude of the horrors that we have inflicted on those 2 million people. We may know that, and the world will know that because now you can't hide anything from history. We have a very long process of healing coming together. But here's, I'm not a politician, but here's my guess. We so we hope to get rid of Netanyahu one way or another, see him deep in jail, being charged for corruption and treason and so on. Who are the other possible leaders of Israel? For 1.5 years, we did have another government of people whose views I despise. There was Naftali Bennett, who was right-wing man, and then Yair Netanyahu. For 1.5 years, we had a government, functioning government of relatively young people, Muslims, religious people, all of them working together. That was a miracle, which then perished. But I'm trying to think about one of these people. Yeah, Lapid, Bennett, Gantz. That's
I
my
just wanted to ask, what happened to Benny Gantz? He was floated as kind of potential successor of Netanyahu. He even went to the US without Netanyahu's approval. What happened there?
that he grew not far from here. I live in Kfar Achim, so his sister is kind of my neighbor, and not far from here in this village is the house where he grew up. He's a mystery. I don't appreciate him very much. He allowed Netanyahu to abuse him and humiliate him, but he's a decent guy. But what I'm going to say is this. Imagine a situation in which there is a Israeli prime minister who is not Netanyahu. He may be even right wing, but functioning prime minister. And he's faced by the following challenge. Americans come to him, Americans, Egyptians, Saudis, and say, Mr. So sign here, here, and here, and here. And this is the deal. Israel going back at the plus minus borders of 67, Palestinian state along it with guarantees. The Jordanians already made this guarantee. The you know him, it was very moving. And of course,
Foreign minister, yeah.
and he was, you could see how emotional he was when he made this statement. And now you have guarantees from the Europeans. United States, Germany, France, Britain,
And from the Arabs.
and from the Arabs around you, especially Saudi Arabia and all the Gulf states, that you will have embassies of all these states, Iraq, perhaps Syria, perhaps Lebanon, here. Would you sign? Let me tell you, they would sign. Peace is possible even after what have happened, perhaps especially after what happened. Now that we understand that we are facing a horrible calamity, that there is no other solution but living together. You cannot make ethnic cleansing, although there are some Israelis who want it. You cannot have a Palestinian state from the river to the sea, as some morons in the other side still aspire. Yeah, there are.
That statement is actually in the Likud charter. It's an Israeli statement from the
But
river
it's
to the
also,
sea. It's not the.
but
Yeah.
Thomas, let's be frank. It's also the charter of the Hamas, of what's his name, Hezbollah guy, Nasrallah, or whoever. They also have this slogan.
Mhm.
We have lunatics on both sides. The young generation, I believe also among them, is willing for such a peace, and such a peace is possible. And it's not only possible, that's the only choice that we have. Otherwise, we will see the state of Israel shrinking, people leaving it, running away, as we see the beginning now. We'll have a militant state controlled by rabbis, by Orthodox fanatic people, and going into war in which there will be a mushroom cloud, nuclear mushroom cloud over the Middle East. We don't want that. And it's possible. The alternative is now possible. There are enough responsible leaders around us, even here in Israel. We just need this constellation of, hope that Trump will not be elected. Hope that
That's a good one. And who is better or who would be worse for the Middle East situation? I'm not hopeful for either Trump or Harris.
no, but there is a world of difference between them. Okay, if you have Trump, then you know nothing about what's going to happen in the world because the guy himself doesn't know what he is going to do. He's also demented. Kamala Harris, I guess I could think about better candidates, but no comparison which would be better for Israel or for the world or for the United States. But there is no comparison when you put her next to Trump. So I know very little about that, and I can make any forecast. All I hope is when I look at the leadership of the world, of Europe, of the countries around us, and hopefully for the United States, if they manage not to elect Trump, the constellation may enable a real peace solution between Israel and its neighbors. Remember, the Egyptians to this day don't like us, and to say the least, they despise us. The peace between Israel and Egypt, which Carter, who is now 100, has brought. This is one of the greatest gifts ever in Israeli history, and it works. To this day, it is the Egyptians who mediate between us and the Hamas, and between us and between other states. Look at our neighbor in the east. Do you know that when King Hussein died, Israel has lowered all its flags, never happened before, to the half of the mast. That's how much we loved him. This is a man who, when a soldier of his killed some girls here in Israel, he came to Israel, he kneeled in front of the families and said, I wish I didn't live to this day. He was such a noble person. And we have peace with the Jordanians, and it's a huge blessing. So we had it with the Arabs, with the Egyptians. We had it with the Egyptians. We have it with the Jordanians. For a brief time in Netanyahu's funeral, we saw some people whom we didn't recognize who came from Arab countries to pay respects to Israel's leader. So that was the beginning of the peace. Peace is possible.
Hmm. As I said, I just came back from Amman. I had the chance to interview 4 diplomats, one of which was the former foreign minister and deputy prime minister, Dr. Marwan Muasher. And he told me because he was one of the key architects of the peace treaty. Yeah, I talked with him about the potential or about the Jordanian fear of mass migration from Israel into Jordan, which they consider a possibility. But specifically in regards to the peace treaty, there are more and more voices within Jordan, diplomatic voices, who hint that Jordan should review its peace treaty. They're very careful not to say to negate the peace treaty, but at least to review, because the overall sentiment in Jordan is the peace treaty only benefits Israel and not at all Jordan.
I am so sorry to hear that. For us, it has been a huge blessing. And have we had a good prime minister? Have we had a good leadership? We would make everything that we could that it will be a blessing for Jordan. I mean, the security of Jordan is a Israeli interest. We need to have a good, secure state along our side in the east. I hope that Dr. Moshe is wrong. I wish I could talk to him to beg him. Look, your late king despised Netanyahu. King Hussein's view of Netanyahu was known just short time before his death. He voiced his opinion. But we are not Netanyahu. Give us a chance. Give us a chance. Maybe another government. The good relationships, the peace, and even friendship or brotherhood between us and the Jordanians is possible. It's there. The chance is there. I don't know how to do that. I'm not a diplomat. I'm a physicist. And you came to interview me, not in this capacity. I wish I could talk to them. I wish, and perhaps this is something that people like you can facilitate, that there will be more dialogues between us and our neighbors, Egyptians, Jordanians, Syrians, Iraqis, Lebanese. Let's talk about how we manage without our governments to form, and Palestinians, of course, above all, how we manage to form close ties between us such that we will make facts fait accompli, things which are happening, strong bonds between us, cultural, commercial, and so on. Perhaps it is something that the people can do and then bring the government to do that.
There is a really good example of this. I don't even want to say cooperation because it's much more than that. I mentioned Nurit Pelet El-Hanan already, who is the sister of Miko Pelet, and this family, of course, their grandfather was, again for our viewers, their grandfather was a co-signatory of the Israeli Charter of Independence, and the father was a general in the 1967 war. So I interviewed both Miko Pelet twice, Nurit Pelet twice, and through the last interview, I came to know her husband. So, as you know, Nurit and her husband Rami, they lost their daughter, 14-year-old daughter, to a Palestinian suicide bomber. And there is a book written, A Paragon, by by an Irish author, detailing the journey of two fathers who both lost their daughters, one of which is Rami El-Hanan, and the other one is a Palestinian father who lost their daughter. This book was translated, I believe, in 40 languages. The Pope read the book. In the interview, she said, as Nurit said to me, my husband was invited twice to the Pope, and I said, when is he going? When is he going? And she said, he was already twice. Yeah. So anyway, in Amman, I took this book. I finished the book. Yeah, it's an incredible story. Indicating it's absolutely possible to come from this animosity, from this view of because both fathers describe their worldview in regards to the other, and this book explains step by step how those two fathers, through the pain of losing her daughter, come together and now really best friends to the world on speaking events. Whereby Rami, also the Israeli father, is very conscious that every time they go home, basically they live in different worlds where he is kind of free on his motorbike, he can go wherever he wants to, and the Palestinian father, of course, goes back into his kind of, how shall I call it, completely apartheid-ish, otherworldly reality. So it's I will put a link to that book in the description. Yeah, but coming back to you, it is possible. Absolutely, it is possible.
Yeah, we have seen that. And we have seen examples in the world. General Dayan, no need to It was a very complicated figure, but he once mentioned the animosity between the Germans and the French. And he said something like that. They hated one another after the wars that they had, more even than we and the Arabs hate each other. And now there is peace between them. We have the best example in South Africa. We had those committees of truth and uh, how
Truth and reconciliation, I believe, was it called.
we may have something like that, a healing process, aided by diplomats and psychologists and people and clergy people from all sides, of two sides coming, confessing to one another. You can, whether you can pardon them or not, I don't know, but just, bringing it out. If the white and the black in South Africa, who I mean, the atrocities that they committed on both sides were not no less than what happened here. They managed to have kind of peace. There used to be a solution. Look around you, Ireland, Lebanon to some extent, and other places where you thought that nothing can be done. And sometimes it has been done. Perhaps, after the graveyards have their share of young people's graves, Abba Ibn once said, nations take the best solution after they tried everything else. We have we have tried everything else, I believe. We have almost exhausted the possibilities, and peace is possible. We see peace between us and the Egyptians and the Jordanians, and it's still holding. Why not broaden it? And then the Middle East may become a completely different place.
Hmm. You have been outspoken already for quite a while. So this is not new. Yeah, you're very, very critical. So I collected, and again, I used ChatGPT for that. I asked ChatGPT, so what are the statements of Avshalom that he was most criticized for? I think I have five. I will give you them, and then maybe you pick the one that, in your experience, was the most controversial for you in terms of how shall I call it, feedback. So the first one was, of course, the criticism of Israeli occupation, because you said apparently your statement was it undermines Israel's security and territorial claims. You call to an end. Yeah? So point one. Then, I mean, it's really hard to mention empathy for Palestinians. You were criticized for having empathy for Palestinians, and the critic was that you're downplaying Israeli victimhood, which is, of course, a key concept for the Zionist project. Yeah, the perpetual mortal threat and victimhood. Now, number three is opposition of the settlements. Then you talked about the moral responsibility of Israel society. That's a very tricky one, because there is a not so distant Gallup survey which indicates that a huge percentage of the Israeli population actually support what happens now in Gaza, and a significant portion even finds that not enough is done. Yeah, Israel should even do more. And point five is, of course, you criticize the two-state solution.
No,
Opponents on
no, I never forgot. No, of course not. So that,
Let me have a look.
I
Okay,
I
while
advocate,
while
I
Asian,
advocate that
also
two state.
okay, let me be more specific. Yeah, two-state solution advocacy, not opposing advocacy. So, while Avshalom supports a two-state solution, critics argue that this position is naive and unfeasible given the current political blah 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 blah. Yeah, so you're for it, not against it. Sorry. So these were the five arguments of yours that you were harshly criticized in Israel. But for you, what was the most outstanding one? Where did you face the most heat for?
All of them. As I said in Al Jazeera, I was interviewed in Al Jazeera not long ago. That was a funny situation because that guy, a very good journalist, brought three Jewish people to the discussion, and he hoped that we will not throw chairs on one another. So we didn't give him this embarrassment. So we had a young Jewish lady from the United States who was anti-Zionist, and then another guy who was aide to the former Israeli prime ministers, and myself. I said at the time, for the two-state solution, that's the only hope that we have. Otherwise, we would all perish, and that would be a huge war, epic war with millions, tens of millions of casualties. Now it is very clear. We have a messianic part sector in Israel. They don't think in, I mean, Netanyahu believe it in himself, but people like Smotrich and we have a woman named Orit Struk. She says the war is a miracle. She has this kind of smile, that religious morons sometimes have because they see God all the time. And you have all the rabbis who say, now God is showing his great hand. Oy vey. So we have these people who are messianic and they think that bloodshed is good, because a messianic person, a religious person, doesn't believe in death. All those people who died are now in heaven. Their heroes are now with 72 virgins with blue eyes waiting for them, and we Jews, our heaven is more culinary. The description is not about the sexual pleasures, but about the gastronomic pleasures that we have. But each of the sides have their own version of paradise. This is a madness, and you have to do something about the madness. I'm really concerned. In Israel, the education is deteriorating, and then as it does deteriorate, we will have more and more rabbis. I have a friend who just, makes Yair Nehorai, he's a lawyer, and he made a point of bringing some of the preachers of these rabbis to the audience. And I'm not talking only about ultra religious, but people educated, with degrees and so on, who talk about the Messiah coming and we are building the next temple and so on. They're very dangerous because they speak in a kind of modern language. They know some
They
science.
want the confrontation. Yes.
Yeah, yeah, and they want it. They want it because somehow, and that's a problem with this kind of religion. This is a kind of psychosis that holds that death is not a bad thing. That people dying is just good for you. They will come back. They will be resurrected by the Messiah. We Jews have our share of dumb nonsense of this kind, just as our neighbors have. We can do something about it. We can uproot it. We can make sure that there is more education, more advance, more culture coming to the Middle East, being helped by Europe, by the United States, as we did so far. We have imported, the State of Israel has imported knowledge and science to other countries in Africa and in Asia. This is what states should do to one another.
Mm.
Once you do that, once you offer an alternative to these ultra-religious messianic ideologies here and in the Arab states, there is hope.
You mentioned a two-state solution, just to verify also for the viewer. So, because there are different versions of the two-state solution, right? The one version is a two-state solution, but with the settlers in the West Bank and potentially in Gaza. And then there's a two-state solution where there are no settlers anywhere in the West Bank or in Gaza. So, what are you referring to?
I
I
wish,
know it's a tricky one. I know. I know.
yeah, I don't know. I mean, we have some of the settlers are such that I would be, and many of us would be eternally grateful for our Palestinian neighbors to take them and just to keep guarding them. You know what? Let them fight there. I really don't care about them. Okay, they are not. They're Jewish. They speak Hebrew. Should be my brothers, even genetically. I really don't care about them. I wish they could stay there and never come back to Israel because they are poisoning us. Some of them may come to their senses, understand that it's not possible, and come back. Settlements are a big problem, but it can be solved. So when I say two states, um, you can be creative uh, and find creative solutions. We have many Palestinians living with us. They can host some settlements, some settlers, some messianic people there, and hoping to be in peace with them. Wouldn't be a poetic justice if all these villas in the West Bank will be now given to uh, poor Palestinians? I don't know. The settlements is a small problem. That's not a major hindrance to peace. We will have to deal with it, and things like that have been done. So that's not a, I don't think that it's a major concern.
I would, if you still have time, a couple of minutes, yeah, I would briefly would like to go into psychoanalytic insights into the Bible and Judaism, if we can relate it to the conflict.
Sure, sure, of course.
Yeah.
You know, many years ago, there was a letter from Freud to Einstein. Einstein asked Freud, that was between the two world wars. So here you had a relatively young man who was at the age of 26, wrote an equation of 5 terms, and that he didn't know that it's going to wreak such a huge havoc on the world. He was just a man trying to understand the riddles of nature. But then he was Jewish, and he was a pacifist and a humanist, and he asked a simple question: why are there wars? Which sounds like an idiotic question, but this is what geniuses do, asking idiotic questions. And then he said, we have another famous guy, Sigmund Freud, and he's dealing with people, why, with the instincts of people. And then Freud wrote the famous essay, Warum Krieg? Why War? In which he apologizes to Einstein and says, "Look, this is what psychoanalysis has to say." Freud believed in the death instinct, which very few. Talking about death instinct, I let the kitten come inside. Yeah,
We have background music coming from a chorus of young kittens.
yeah,
Yes.
right. Yeah, yes, staying. Yeah, right.
Mm,
So he was giving all the noise. So
yeah.
my daughters keep that. So Freud told Einstein the following: there is a life instinct, like this guy, and the death instinct, and they are, going against one another in the human psyche. People today don't believe in the death instinct. There was another Austrian Nobel laureate, Konrad Lorenz, who said that this is
Yep.
just aggression, which is a better. So this is just, within psychology. But what Freud said there was one of the most profound lessons of psychology to understanding the humans. He said, we all want to kill ourselves. We have a death instinct. You don't have to invoke the death instinct. People, there is something suicidal in people, and sometimes they want to kill themselves. Now, there is this fear of wanting to kill yourself because you
Mm,
want to live. So you project it. This was Freud's idea, and I think that it was very correct. In order to defend yourself against your own murderous, self-murderous impulses, then you project it on the other. You can see it in religions. People feel that they are sinful. What did I do? I made adultery, I masturbated, and so on and so on. One of the best ways, as Freud has shown, to deal with this is to project it, to say it is them who are evil. We are clean, we are good. Remember Hitler, remember Stalin. These people eventually murdered themselves. Remember Goebbels and his wife, they killed their 6 children together with their Führer. Uh, so I think that what Freud said to Einstein was very correct. There is something within us that wants to destroy us. Every psychologist will tell you that. It doesn't come even to suicide. Let me see if I can do something to this kitten who keeps howling. Okay. Uh, so I think that Freud was absolutely correct in that people, individuals, and nations have this tendency of hurting themselves, and we should deal with that once we learn that. That comes from psychology, and psychology is important. And once again, it goes hand in hand with democracy. Psychology means that you are letting your own unconscious be heard, and you want to listen to it together with your conscious part, super ego, the id, and so on, whatever theory it is, it doesn't matter. And I think that this is the idea of democracy. So nations can become neurotic, can become psychotic when they suppress part of themselves. This is the idea of dictatorship, and this is why they crumble later. So, from the psychoanalytic viewpoint, the hatred between us and the Arabs has a lot of projection So in this case, Freud was correct. Every party in this hatred between every party in this hatred projects on the other. They are the villains. They are the bad, especially sexual matters, which our Palestinian brothers also have their own guilt feelings about that because of their Qadis, because of their religion. Something can be done about that. Once again, this is education. This is democracy. This is the availability of therapy. You know that Israel and the Gaza region are going to be the places, the populations where the amount of PTSD is going to be the highest in the world. PTSD is a disease that comes after 3, 4, sometimes 10 years. What is going to happen? We are now under, this is the incubation period, as psychiatrists used to say. You have been through trauma, you don't always react immediately, but it goes there, and then when it emerges, you're in a serious trouble. We are going to be two post-traumatized nations, which is really difficult. So once again, you see, democracy goes hand in hand with mental health. Dictatorship is a kind of either neurosis or psychosis in which part of the nation, of the psyche, of the collective psyche is suppressed. But this can be remedied. People like Nurit El-Hanan, you mentioned her. She is a very dear lady, and we have many people like that. We have Yeah, that was another thing that now the kitten is done. Sorry about that. Uh, we see that sometimes bereaved people who have been through the worst, burying a child. We have a man named Yitzhak Frankenthal who is he's also a bereaved father. Many people like them who are the leaders in this still small, but let's hope that it is going to widen dialogue between the two nations. We have buried our dear ones, you have buried your dear ones. Now we should hate one another, revenge against one another, and it will go on and on forever. Let's stop it for once and for all. Let's begin forgiving, understanding, and embracing one another. Again, it has happened. It's happened in Ireland. You don't hear about Irish people now, Catholics and Protestants murdering one another. It happened in other parts, even, Yugoslavia, now relatively calm. Not everybody is happy, but we had an author, Amos Oz, who said the solution is like in the novels of Chekhov. Nobody is really happy, but there is some settlement. Everybody got something of what he wants. It is possible. We see that. So people like Nurit El-Hanan, people, to my great shame, I don't remember the Arab names of the people on the other side, but they have proved to be it to be possible. And there, there is there is a place for hope.
On that note, Avshalom, because you were very, very generous with your time, yeah, a last question. You are a physicist. Your specialized knowledge, yeah, or this does this abstract expertise of yours give you an additional perspective, when it comes to the senseless killing in the Middle East in general and in Palestine, Israel in particular?
Think about some things. There was a pioneer of quantum mechanics, Eugene Wigner, who wrote a beautiful article for non-physicists on the unbelievable, how is it, incomprehensible uh, fitness of mathematics to the language of mathematics to the understanding of physics. And there he asked a question that we keep asking ever since Plato. How come that something like mathematics, which is so abstract, holds for material world and helps you build, have technology and so on? I don't think he was a religious person, but he ends with a religious note that this profound capability of mathematics to help us understand the world is a gift that we don't understand, neither deserve. All I can say to people, let's try to deserve this gift. I mean, the gift of knowledge, the gift of science. It can bring good to our world. So yeah, this is what physics tells you. The world is wonderful. The universe has so many beauty in it, the laws of nature, and they dwarf us human beings. We are so temporary. Humanity itself is now in danger. You know, the climate and what all we are inflicting on this planet. Science tells us that there is a way. There is a way. It's not what religions promise, you know, eternal happiness and so on, but there is a way to have life, decent ones, happy ones. And for that, you need peace. So let's deserve this gift.
Very fitting concluding remarks, Avshalom. It was my absolute pleasure talking to you. Thank you very much.
Auf Wiedersehen. Shalom from
Auf Wiedersehen. Shalom.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for tuning into SaltCube Analytics. We hope today's episode gave you something to think about and challenged the way you see the world. If you enjoyed the show, don't forget to subscribe or follow us and leave a review or a comment. Your feedback helps us keep questioning the status quo. For more insights and discussions, follow us on YouTube, Rumble, TikTok, Twitter, Spotify, Apple Podcast, or any of your other preferred podcast platforms. Until next time, stay informed, stay curious, and remember, always look beyond the headlines.